I wanted to give my response to A Course in Miracles, having just completed it yesterday. 365 lessons. What did I learn? How did it change me? And what's next? Here on Jinkajabo. So without having a copy in front of me and just sitting here in the sunlight, I'd rather just talk about my experience with the Course and what I learned from it. Having completed the 365 lessons and having read the text a total of 3 times. I started a 4th time. I was going to do it 4 times, but I decided to give that a break because my ebook somehow got deleted at random, so I didn't have all my highlighted parts. Anyway, I did read the text several times, and I think that's a crucial part to doing the Course. And I was surprised to learn that many people have taken the Course without studying the text. This reminds me of, it was maybe my first week in grad school, where having had the assigned reading, I showed up to class having not completed it. And the professor, Dr. Tiedemann, he was very upset about that. He said, you have to read the text every day. And from then on, I devoted a lot of time to reading just to make sure that I was ready in class, because I knew he would try to trip me up. And so it was a good habit to form, and something that a lot of kids don't have in high school and college. I think we've lost that ethic. But the fact is, just like a college course, I treated it as something where I had to read the text to go along with it. Now, just as the lessons are 365 days, 365 lessons, I noticed that the text is broken down into 31 chapters, and so I thought I could probably read it in a month. The first couple of times I read the Course, it took me, I think the first time it took me about 3 months, second time took me another 3 months, and then I tried doing it all in 1 month, over the course of November, I think. Every day I would read a chapter of the book, and that helped me along. In addition to doing the lesson for the day. And sometimes, the text is difficult to read. Sometimes it took me 45 minutes or even an hour to read a single chapter, because I would have to go back and reread parts of it. But it is broken down in such a way that I think if I were to make a lasting study program for the Course in Miracles, apart from doing the lessons, I would think that just reading a chapter every day, you could read the text in a year, and that would be an hour a day of just reading that. But, that's what people do in Christian Science, in other disciplines and everything. If you really regard it as the voice of Jesus, then why not? It kind of felt like, I'd carry the ebook around, and I'd sit down for dinner or something, and I read a lot, but it was sort of like having another person with me. So to go in directly just to the lessons themselves, my habit was waking up every morning and writing the lesson on a little chalkboard behind my bed, which was sometimes easy to do, sometimes hard, and sometimes I couldn't fit the entire lesson. But for the lessons are broken down into 2 parts. The first part, which is half a year, it just goes through breaking down your fundamental perceptions and looking at the eternal in all things, not trusting your eyes, learning not to trust your eyes, learning to see yourself as having more than maybe you really seem to in this life. It has to do with forgiving people, going through your memories, sort of like metta meditation, where you go through and you pick out people who have wronged you, and you learn to forgive them one by one. And so the Course, I would say, is actually a painful experience, as it should be. It's sort of I've heard it described by one teacher on YouTube as bearing your own cross, as I mentioned in my last video, as picking the thorns out of your head from the crown that's placed upon you, and that we all have to follow in the footsteps of Jesus to obtain what Jesus obtained. And that is a perfect understanding of love and peace and eternity, something that lasts forever. So these seem as universal thoughts. I would say they apply to most any religion. But there is some question about what source this is. Is it kind of New Age crap, or what is it? Because after you go through that first section of lessons where you begin to doubt the reality around you, it replaces that with something else, where you, in the second set of lessons, you learn in full measure who you are and what you're trying to do, and how to overcome your temptations, your habits, your wrongdoing, how to let it go and move on. And finally, it builds to just realizing that God is present in every instant moment, and that you have to trust what the book calls the holy instant, which is the realization that in a single moment you can capture all of eternity, and that time doesn't matter, distance doesn't matter. Like, you can find holiness and salvation in one moment. It reminds me of the Zen concept of Satori, in Japanese, Satori, sudden enlightenment. That's believed by many Zen practitioners. And Pure Land Buddhists out here, they say if you say Amitabha's name just once and you mean it sincerely, that gets you into the Pure Land, or their version of heaven, I would say. So I was kind of expecting, having read a lot of criticism about the Course, that at some point I would read, "Oh, I am God." I was sort of looking for that Shirley MacLaine moment, where the book tells me, oh, well, being New Age, Aquarian, gospel type stuff, it should say that I am God, and that this is if this is really a cult, baby boomer-esque nonsense that was given to us in the 60s, then it should elevate the reader to the point of not needing a personal savior or a personal God. Helen Schucman, the Columbia psychologist to whom it was dictated, it was sort of her Quran. She channeled it, and this was another criticism in a similar way to how Muhammad channeled the Quran, which means literally the recitation. She was an atheist and conservative politically, is what I've read. I'm not sure what that means or what that meant back in the 60s. And she grew up, and this was interesting, with some exposure to Christian Science. And that's sort of what led me to the Course in Miracles, is having studied Mary Baker Eddy and gone to Christian Science services. And that seemed like an offshoot of that. We're part of this greater collective, which many people would lump together even stuff like The Secret or Deepak Chopra, those teachings, the Oprah type stuff. And the Course in Miracles is a very big text for Oprah, and she made it popular through Marianne Williamson, who was a writer who did the Course, and now you encounter it everywhere, even in Protestant churches, Catholic churches. Like, this Course is studied and practiced everywhere, which is a little bit concerning, I guess, even as someone who just completed it and who saw nothing wrong with it, because it doesn't say that you are God in the end. It doesn't elevate you to that point. If anything, it's what got me going back to church and reading my Bible again. However, many caveats, because I've gone through and I've researched where this book is taught, and it's a big part of the Unity Church. And I've been to Unity Village in Missouri. It's one of those New Age enclaves, kind of like Tucson or Virginia Beach, the ARE Center. It's one of those places where, alongside Christianity, you see astrology being practiced and stuff like that. Some weird things, crystals and holistic health and homeopathy and all that. It's hard to say. With all this stuff blended together, it's strange to just look at the Course and see it as it is, to read the text and realize that it's really just a, if anything, clinical way of examining your own ego. And that, if anything, it's applicable to any religion, I would say. It has more to do with psychology than with God, even though religious terminology is used. The very simple fact that if you maintain a forgiving attitude, it it opens the doors to everything. One new agey element to it that I will concede, however, is that it does use visuals quite a bit. It asks you at certain points to see light in things, to look for light that's not there in things, like outlines. And having listened to a few people who've done the course, I can say that it is pretty common to develop visual habits, almost hallucinations. Without going into detail, almost stuff that would resemble like DMT or mushrooms or stuff like that. It's very, very close. I mean, it's the same basic matter you're working with. And in my experience, I did have a few visuals, a few hallucinations that I believe were prompted by the course. And one of them was what I considered like the silver vision, where I would see outlines to everything, sort of silver linings to everything, a sharper contrast to all things. Almost like the world around me turned to animation when I realized, I need to stop looking at everything as just this drab, dreary nonsense. We don't realize how much of our vision we project from our own heads into the world around us, and so we see darkness in places where it really is not. And so just like adjusting the dials on a TV, I was seeing things in a sharper contrast. That's what I considered like the silver vision, which I got from a certain part in the text, which again I don't have in front of me right now, but I'll look that up at some point. And then there was what I called the golden vision, and that was the kind of home movie used sepia, old film type stuff that you would see, that nostalgic, everything covered in sunlight, everything beautiful, Paul Simon Kodachrome type thing. And those were the visions that I drew on, and those are the ones that I still cling to. And then, there was one more, which is expressly described in one of the early lessons, in the first set of lessons, where when you're in trouble, you're supposed to just reach your arms out and visualize the arms of Jesus touching back. Visualize being able to reach into the clouds and grab the hands of Jesus, which is a very powerful image, which is something that, sure, anyone in any church should be able to do. The course itself is not for the weak-hearted. It's something that you have to come to and you have to be ready for. And in fact, I've known about it for more than 10 years. And the first time I tried it was when I lived in South Korea. And I was able to get through about 60 days, 75 lessons maybe, before I quit altogether. I just wasn't able to handle it. And one of the important lessons, which I think Lisa Natoli talks about in one of her talks, is that you don't have to understand every lesson. You don't have to complete it perfectly to move on. And that's what helps you keep going. There's even a point in the course where it says, I know that you haven't been doing the lessons completely, but don't worry about that. Just keep going. You don't have to understand them to benefit from them. Anyway, it was nice waking up every morning and having a positive message. Stuff like, you are not a victim. Or, forgiveness fixes everything. I'm just paraphrasing without having the text in front of me. But anyway, I recommend it for anyone who's curious. Just go through and try it and read the text. You really have to read the text to get much out of it. But it was an interesting year, and if anything, it's just made me feel better about being able to commit to something like that. It really is a lot of work, but it's worth doing. And again, I do have some criticisms about it, but I did not find anything directly that challenged the idea that God is greater than any individual person. There was nothing inherently sinful about it, but I do need to do some more studies. And I think from now on, I'm not sure what direction I will take next, but it'll be nice to... I'm interviewing different spiritual texts to see what will be my next bag, I guess. And I'll keep all of you posted on that. And if you have any questions, please let me know. But I will talk to you again tomorrow, probably. Peace.